Hi, and welcome to a special edition of Newsmakers. I'm Jerry Roberts. It is Thursday, March 7th. We are talking with Representative Salud Carbajal, who joins us from Washington, and we're just moments after the conclusion of President Biden's State of the Union address. I was just congratulating Representative Carbajal. He got some great FaceTime on CNN. What was the president saying to you as he walked up the aisle there? You had a brief conversation with him, I saw.
Well, we were talking because he was being heckled by some of my colleagues on the other side of the aisle, and I just told him, "Keep your head up. You're doing a great job. Looking forward to hearing your speech."
Yeah. All right. Well, this was obviously, I think, a bigger moment than the usual State of the Union. Obviously, the policy implications, but it's essentially the kickoff of the general election as well. Donald Trump has now sewed up the Republican nomination, and it was a very political speech. Your candidates, your president's biggest problem is people think he's old, he's frail, maybe he's not all there. What was your takeaway from his performance tonight in terms
Well,
of addressing those questions?
well, I think it was obvious. He was strong. He was bold. He was clear, and again, I think he set forth a course reminding the American people of the big contrast between taking our country forward with bold ideas, being inclusive, or resorting to the alternative, which is chaos, belittling people, um, chaos at its best. I think the president was strong, he was bold, he was clear. He reminded us that he has been an effective president, signed over 400 bipartisan bills into law. He laid out priorities that we should all be able to agree on, Republicans and Democrats. For example, lowering the costs, everyday costs for families, a fair tax code for all, making sure that the very wealthy and corporations are paying their fair share, growing the middle class, defending our rights, women's rights, and democracy here and abroad. And he showed us that experience matters. He said there's another guy his age also running that continues to espouse things and messages that show that he wants to take us back as a country to darker days instead of moving us forward. I thought he did an extraordinary job.
Yeah, I mean, I thought his line about, there's a difference between being old and having old ideas, that was a pretty good political formulation. But I do wonder, Salute, I've only been listening to these things for 46 years, I figured out the other day.
You're as old as former President Trump.
I'm very close to former president. But I mean, the tone of it was very combative. It was kind of almost a convention speech. I think he mentioned my predecessor. He didn't mention Trump by name, but at least a dozen times referencing things. Do you think that was a good idea? Do you think that was obviously something they wanted to accomplish? What do you think the impact on that'll be? I know you're someone who prizes bipartisanship. I just wonder if it wasn't too partisan.
No, I think he did a really good job. I think in distinguishing himself. I think people wanted to see him being very present, very able, very strong, and he did that. And he pointed out the differences, at least here in Congress, between Republicans and Democrats as well as a contrast between him and his opponent and his predecessor. And I think he did a good job of reminding the American people he's very able, that experience matters. People watching tonight are thinking the choice they have to make in November. He took that head on and wanted to tell the American people and lay out his vision, not only of what he has accomplished, but what he feels we still need to do to become an even better nation and to bring us together and continue to make us the prosperous nation that we all aspire to be.
All right, let me ask you about a couple of the issues. I mean, he came out swinging on two issues that are very divisive: Ukraine first, and then January 6th. And he said, you know, I'm not going to or I'm going to bury the lies or something like that, which obviously set the tone. What was the reaction as you sat on the floor there? Was it completely Democrats liked it and Republicans didn't, or what was your take on that?
Well, of course, I think our Republican colleagues on various occasions were muted, but Democrats clearly appreciated him reminding the American people and my colleagues across the aisle that democracy is at stake, and we need to stand by our allies, stand by NATO, and support Ukraine in this fight against the invasion by Putin and what that means for democracies around the world. He also reminded the American people what the insurrection was and what it was not. And it was clearly a violent attack on our democracy and reminding the American people that former President Trump was the leader of making sure that happened.
Yeah, I thought he was kind of trolling Trump a little bit with some of the language on Ukraine when he said that Trump had bowed down to Putin and he wasn't going to bow down to Putin. Do you think he was trolling Donald Trump there?
I think he was pointing out that very essence of what Trump has been about and statements he continues to make, very pro Putin. Statements that are not becoming of a United States president who has our interests at heart. I think he was very poignant. And, he talked about how he said Trump said Russia can do whatever they want and should do whatever they want. And I think, for all Americans that are listening, we should all be scared of that rhetoric and what it means for the future of the United States if somebody that dangerous is able to get back into the White House.
Yeah. Let me ask you about a couple of issues because I know you got to scoot out of here. You got a lot of demands on your time, and I appreciate you dropping by Newsmakers as your top priority, as always, Salud. But in terms of the economy, he used a lot of statistics, unemployment, inflation coming down, even the stock market, a lot of sort of statistical indicators to say we have an economy that's the envy of the world. I wondered about the wisdom of that because is that the felt experience of people that do you think people are feeling the economy that way as you go around the 24th congressional district?
Well, these statistics are facts. We have a roaring economy. We did have inflation that I think brought much concern and angst, and we still have a little bit of that. So I think he was also pointing out that, look, we have a ways to go. We certainly look at the economy. It's roaring, but we also need to continue to work on making the costs that families face day in and day out. He talked about childcare, preschool, housing, providing American families relief. He touched on all those things that I think resonate with families, seniors, prescription drugs costs. He was able to bring down insulin for seniors, capping monthly insulin for those that depend on it to $35 a month for those that are on Medicare, and capping prescription drugs to no more than $2,000 a year, where we know many very important medications cost thousands and thousands of dollars. And he talked about what this means in terms of the economy, what he's been able to achieve. And despite some of the angst that I think we still continue to face, wanted to reassure the American people, look, we've done a lot, but there's a lot more work that needs to be done. And he's committed to that. And I thought he was very strong and very clear.
Yeah, I just wonder if there's a fine line there between trying to tell people what they should be feeling about the economy. But you obviously felt he didn't go that far, that he was giving sort of the big picture, and I think within that, if you look at the polling, people aren't happy about the economy. They aren't happy about their personal situations, and there's still
Jerry, you know what they say in politics? A month is a lifetime in politics, and we have a number of months till November. And I think you will see that the investments, for instance, in the Central Coast, we brought in now through the bipartisan infrastructure law and the Inflation Reduction Act, addressing climate change, addressing energy, renewable energy, infrastructure investments, over $800 million. That's just part of the money that has been flowing to the Central Coast. And I think I think what he tried to do is exactly that: remind the American people, give some more thought to how good the economy is going. I know sometimes it feels like it's not, but it's going pretty darn good. But again, he also didn't want to minimize the angst and the continued challenge of making sure we're reducing costs for American families, working class families, middle class, to make sure that they are better able to get by and live that American dream. I think he touched on, bringing higher education costs down, increasing financial aid, addressing student debt, student loan debt. He really talked about all those bread and butter issues, table bread and butter issues that I think American families are concerned about, and to point out what he's been able to do and what he hopes to continue to do as president.
Let me ask you a couple questions about immigration, because that is at the top of the list about people's concerns and a lot of recent polling. He had this exchange with your close personal friend Marjorie Taylor Greene from Georgia about this awful story about a young woman, a nursing student, who was murdered down there about someone who was by someone who was in the country illegally. How do you think he handled that?
Well, I think he tried to take it head on. Look, he wanted to acknowledge that, that was a terrible crime that happened. But no one incident characterizes a whole group of people. The majority of immigrants, legal or undocumented, are good, abiding citizens. They want to come here for opportunity or to escape persecution. And when you consider what economists have said, what they're saying now, that we need a workforce that can meet the demands that our country needs, so that we need to address immigration reform. He also pointed out that our Republican colleagues have denied a bipartisan bill from moving forward in the House that would address that crisis at the border. In other words, he pointed out the hypocrisy of my colleagues on the other side of the aisle, pointing to the border, pointing to that one case, and trying to define immigration that way, and saying, look, you have been open and overt about saying that there's a crisis at the border, that there's challenges with our immigration system, but you're overt now of also saying that you don't want to solve it. You don't want to move forward the bipartisan immigration deal that came to the House. Why? Because former President Trump has said he doesn't want that to move forward because they could help Biden. And he called members of Congress and said, whatever you do, don't move forward with solving the immigration issue.
Yeah, and the Biden was pretty effective in calling. And I said, do you want to argue about it or do you want to pass the bill? Which, is a little Harry Truman, do nothing Congress kind of thing there with a heavy overlay. Did you have a little cringe moment when he used the term, she was killed by an illegal?
Well, I think he was caught in the moment, and that's the word he used. So he paraphrased it back to her as he was going to give her and give Congress his response. Clearly, we know that the correct word is undocumented, because nobody is illegal as a human being. And, he could have used a better choice of words, but it doesn't reflect his views and how he views immigrants.
I noticed that former Speaker Pelosi and many of the women on the Democratic side were wearing white. I assume that was a statement about Roe v. Wade, about choice, about
Absolutely.
case.
Absolutely. I think they wanted to show the American people that women's rights will be on the ballot this coming November again, and reminding what's at stake. And so I think that was the message that we're trying to send.
Yeah. And, how salient do you think that issue is going to be? It was obviously very important, got a lot of traction in the midterms 2022. Do you think it's still something that Democrats are going to be able to use effectively?
Absolutely. This is a huge issue. Democrats and many Republicans believe that women should have the right to abortion, the right for reproductive health care, and the fact that Republicans and this Supreme Court that was stacked by President Trump is taking us back when it comes to women's rights. So absolutely.
All right. I'm going to let you go, but I got to ask you, because a lot of members and obviously the president and others, make a big point about the guests that they invite to the State of the Union in terms of making political points, but also, people who they support. Did you have any special guests that you brought in this year, Salud?
I brought the most special of guests this year for the first time in the 8 years that I'm serving in Congress. My wife, Gina
Nice.
Carbajal.
Nice. Did she enjoy the speech?
She did. She had never been to a State of the Union address, and she expressed an interest in attending. And I can never deny the number one constituent. That's my wife. So she came, and I think she found the experience very uplifting when you consider the speech the president gave. And I think she really enjoyed being under the dome.
And you've been there 8 years, and so you've figured out how to get an aisle seat at the State of the Union, which is a pretty tricky thing. There's a lot of competition for those seats. So what was your secret on that?
Well, no secret. Like I said, I placed a folder hoping that it might not be moved and save me a spot, because sometimes they are moved when they sweep the floor. They remove things, and lo and behold, my folder was still there, and I was able to get a good seat.
Hey, how much heckling was there on the Republican side? It was hard to tell on the broadcast. What was it like in the chamber?
There was some. I would say more than needed to be. I think it was a failure of decorum. I think my colleagues on the other side of the aisle consistently for many years now have really stooped to a very low in changing the etiquette, the deference, the respect that you afford our president and commander-in-chief. When Trump was president, there wasn't this type of heckling, despite how much disagreement that Democrats had with him and our friends across the aisle. And so it was very disappointing that my colleagues across the aisle have reached an all-time low, are setting a terrible precedent, and it's really unfortunate. I think it's not becoming of the institution that we are a part of. I'm not sure the American people who are inclined to side with hecklers. I think they see it as not good debate, but disrespectful attitudes and behavior. And I think hoping the American people, will think of that when they go to the polls.
All right, which we get 223 days till the election or so. President Biden's running behind Donald Trump 4 or 5 points nationally, behind in all those battleground states. Do you think?
Keep in mind
you think this is enough to turn the corner?
Well, keep in mind George W. Bush was like that. Barack Obama was like that. Clinton was like that. The only polls that matter is election day.
Oh, you're not going to say it, please.
You know that. And so I think that, a month is a lifetime in politics, and we have many months before November. And I think you're going to see the American people, now that the primaries have come to a close, or are coming to a close, and you have a real contrast. Two individuals that are pretty much the same age. One who has a positive vision for the future for the United States and has accomplished quite a bit as a president, and a president who served us in the past, who really brought down the etiquette in our country, divided our country further with extreme right rhetoric, is not really the president that I think the American people will vote for comes November. You want to go forward with positive action or chaos that's been symbolic of and typical of the previous president?
All right, I promise this is the last question, but I know when you were in the district, you had some protesters on the Gaza issue. And there seems to be some large protests in Washington tonight over that issue. How serious do you think that is to the unity of the Democratic coalition? I know young people, particularly college students, obviously Arab Americans, unhappy with the president's strong support of Israel to this point. How big a deal is it politically for Democrats?
Well, you'll notice no Democrats heckled him tonight. And I think that is a very strong statement. You know, there's diversity of opinion. This is democracy. And I think you'll see that the president will be rewarded in November because he's working feverishly to make sure that aid gets into Gaza. He talked about opening a port so that we could bring in more aid, as he also presses Israel to provide more humanitarian aid in Gaza. He addressed the importance of making sure civilian Palestinian lives don't continue to be the case. He also talked about the importance of supporting Israel as they go after Hamas and dismantling that organization, and making sure that as they work towards a permanent ceasefire, to make sure that the hostages are released. I think people will see that he's working frantically and diligently to bring about peace and stability in the Middle East and to resolve this issue and work with the Middle Eastern countries to bring about a long-term two-state solution that will provide stability, peace, and hope for both Israelis and the Palestinians in the region. And I think that you'll see some more results coming in the very near future. They're very close to reaching a temporary ceasefire and hopefully getting the release of all the hostages, and then start working on the rest of the hard work that needs to be done the day after, working on that two-state solution, bringing everyone together, putting in a technical government in place, reforming the PA, and making sure that we are moving towards achieving the peace and stability that everybody wants.
Yeah, all he's got to do is convince Netanyahu of that. No, all right.
Well,
Salud Carbajal. Thank you so
thank
much.
you, Jerry.
We always appreciate you giving us the time. And he's representative for Santa Barbara, San Luis Obispo counties, the 24th Congressional
And
District.
Ventura.
Oh,
Some of
sorry.
Ventura.
Little bit of Ventura, and he's been speaking with us tonight from the Capitol in Washington, D.C. Thank you, Congressman.
Thank you, Jerry. Appreciate you getting information and this public service you do for our community.
All right, take care.